Imagine a giant castle with tall stone walls and secret hallways that go on forever. Inside this castle, there are big wooden doors that hide very important secrets. Usually, things in a palace move very slowly and quietly, like a clock ticking on a wall. But one day, something huge happened that changed everything. It was like a giant earthquake, but nobody could hear it. It started with a single piece of paper and a pen. King Charles sat down at his big desk and signed a document that would change the future of the royal family. He didn't tell his wife, Queen Camilla. He didn't tell his helpers. He only told his oldest son, Prince William. He decided that Camilla would no longer be the person in charge of the royal family's secret money. Instead, he gave that big job to William. This was a very big deal because whoever holds the money holds the power. It was like a secret treasure map being handed from a father to a son, while the queen was left out in the cold. Why would the king do this? Was it because he didn't trust his wife anymore? Was there a big secret hidden in the bank accounts? Today, we are going to look behind those heavy palace doors and find out exactly why King Charles made this shocking choice. Make sure you stay tuned, because this story involves secret letters, loud arguments, and a queen who found herself locked out of her own castle's secrets. The hallways of the palace were buzzing with people talking. They were just doing their normal jobs, like cleaning the silver or fixing the flowers. But behind a very thick door, a document was signed that was so big and so shocking that even the most important royal helpers were surprised. King Charles had made a massive decision. He didn't ask anyone for their opinion. He only shared the news with his son, William. He decided that Queen Camilla's time in charge of the royal family's money was finished. The special job called Keeper of the Privy Purse was being taken away from her. From now on, that job belonged to Prince William. Before we talk more about what this means for the family, please make sure to subscribe so you never miss any royal news. Very few people outside the palace really understand how powerful the Keeper of the Privy Purse actually is. It is much more than just a fancy name. This person is the gatekeeper. They are the invisible force that makes the whole royal machine work. If you control the purse, you control the future. Usually, this job is given to someone who is super loyal. It is a job for someone who cares only about the crown's history and its future. But this change wasn't just a new person getting a job. It was a sign that trust had been broken. It was like a crack in a beautiful glass vase that no one could fix. Whispers started to fly around the palace when Camilla's office was skipped for a big meeting about the yearly budget. At first, everyone thought it was just a mistake. Maybe someone forgot to send an invite. But then, it happened again and again. It was a pattern. The helpers who used to walk in and out of the king's office and Camilla's office very easily suddenly found that the doors were locked. People would stop talking as soon as Camilla walked into a room. King Charles's world, which used to be very open to her, was getting smaller and smaller. The important people in the palace noticed that things were feeling different. Meetings were changed without any reason. Big decisions were made without the usual signatures from the queen. Something was very wrong, and William, who is always very careful and quiet, started showing up more often in the king's private study. There was no plan written down on a calendar. There were no public notes about these meetings. But the palace staff started calling them the red folder meetings. They called them that because of the thin, red secret folder that King Charles kept very close to him. The father and son would spend hours and hours behind closed doors. When they finally came out, they would just nod at each other. William didn't say anything to the public, but he looked different. He stood taller. He spoke with a stronger voice. He wasn't just the next king anymore. He was being given a responsibility that was much bigger than just a title or a crown. He was being given the keys to the kingdom's deepest secrets. The staff started talking about a mysterious envelope. Usually, royal letters go through a whole team of people who check them and move them around. But this letter was different. It bypassed all the old traditions. There was no fancy messenger. There was no middleman. It was just a single, sealed letter that slid directly from King Charles's desk into William's hand. Some people believed that this envelope held the official order to change who was in charge of the money. It was the letter that said Camilla was out and William was in. If that is true, it explains why the palace was so quiet afterward. There was no news story on TV. There was no big announcement to the world. There was just a feeling of being uneasy. The queen consort was left in the dark about a decision that had already been made. But what made Charles take this step so quietly and so carefully? The reason goes back to a fight that was so loud it shook the palace walls. It started like a normal conversation, but then voices started to rise. The helpers outside the queen's private room froze in place. They were scared. A very angry argument between King Charles and Queen Camilla had started. It was about one of the most important things in the monarchy, who gets to watch the money, and someone else was listening to every single word. What started as whispers in secret became a big problem that everyone could see. No matter how much the royals tried to hide it, the trust was gone. For months, people had been talking about how Camilla was starting to spend too much money. Insiders whispered that she was making her travel plans way more expensive than they needed to be. They said she was growing her charities but not showing where the money was going. There were also very fancy renovations to buildings that were never approved by the money keepers. Camilla had become very confident in her role as queen. She felt like she didn't need to ask for permission anymore. She thought her position meant she could do whatever she wanted with the royal funds. But that idea was destroyed the moment Charles got a secret report about her spending. This report was put together quietly by staff members who were very worried. They sent it to the king through a back door so no one would know. The findings in the report weren't about millions of dollars being stolen, but they showed something else. They showed a picture of someone who felt like they deserved everything without following the rules. Charles, who usually hates fighting, tried to talk to her nicely at first. But he got very frustrated when Camilla reportedly told him he was wrong and she was right. Things got even worse during a meeting that should have been very easy. And that was when William heard everything. William was standing just outside the door and he heard the royal family's good manners completely fall apart. Camilla and the king were in a huge verbal battle. According to people who were there, Camilla shouted, "It's mine now, not hers." This was a very shocking thing to say. When she said hers, she could only have been talking about Queen Elizabeth II. Queen Elizabeth was the grandmother and mother who had been very careful with money for many years. She was the one who defined how the royals should act. In that moment, it wasn't just Camilla arguing with her husband. It was Camilla arguing with the history of the entire royal family. But the most chilling part of the whole story wasn't what was said. It was that someone already knew it was going to happen. Princess Anne, who is very serious about royal rules, had talked to Charles weeks before. Her warning was short and very sharp. She told him to watch the books. She said the bank accounts tell the truth that people won't say out loud. Charles ignored her at first, but now her words felt like a warning that came true. Charles felt trapped. He loved his wife, but he also had a duty to his country and his family's history. William was silent, but he was watching everything. He saw his father looking very upset. He saw Camilla acting like she was in charge of everything. And he realized that there was a truth that could no longer be ignored. Charles wasn't just getting angry, he was making a plan. He had been preparing for this day for a long time. Every royal tradition has a reason, and Charles believed that Camilla had stepped way too far over the line. In his mind, only William was strong enough to carry the weight of the royal purse. To Charles, being a king was about more than just wearing a crown and going to parties. It was about being a steward. This means taking care of things for the next person. He had spent his whole life watching how his mother, Queen Elizabeth, kept everything in balance. She was very disciplined. She didn't have to say things out loud to teach her son. She taught him by the way she looked at papers or how she would say no to a plan without even saying a word. Charles learned everything from her. So when it came time to decide who should guard the money, Charles didn't need to think about it for very long. He just remembered what his mother did. He spent time alone in the palace archives, looking at old records. He thought about how the late queen handled times when there wasn't much money. She never wanted people to clap for her. She just wanted the monarchy to last forever. As Camilla started making more and more choices that Charles didn't like, he started to see signs of trouble. It wasn't that she wasn't loyal, but she didn't understand that the purse wasn't just about coins. It was about keeping the royal family going for another 100 years. William, on the other hand, had shown that he could handle hard work without needing everyone to tell him he was great. During the big meetings about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle leaving the family, William was very calm. Even when everyone else was getting emotional and upset, William stayed cool. He spoke very little, but when he did speak, he made big decisions. Charles noticed this. In his private diary, which no one else is supposed to read, Charles wrote about his struggle. He wanted to be a good husband, but he had to be a good king first. The more he wrote, the more he knew what he had to do. He wasn't going to have a big public fight. That is not how Charles does things. He was going to do a quiet restoration. This means putting things back the way they should be without making a scene. It was a move back to the way the Queen would have wanted things. In his mind, William was the only one who could handle the money without using it to gain power for himself. Camilla had helped him through many personal problems, but this was about something much older than their marriage. As Charles moved the pieces into place, Camilla started to notice that doors were being locked. She noticed that people were looking away when she walked by, and one big change hurt her more than anything else. It wasn't a big announcement. It wasn't even a conversation. One by one, Camilla realized that her power was being cut off. It happened without any warning. The plan started with silence. Camilla showed up for a meeting about money, but she was told the meeting was moved to another time. When she asked for the new time, no one answered her. The important money books she usually looked at every 3 months never arrived at her office. Her name was taken off the list of people who get to see the secret banknotes. The staff, who used to be very friendly and helpful to her, suddenly became very stiff and formal. For a woman who had worked very hard to become the queen, this was a huge insult. It felt like a cold shoulder from the whole palace. It hurt her feelings very deeply. Inside the palace, people were starting to talk about new orders. These orders were being whispered in secret. No one would say who gave the orders, but everyone knew what they meant. The hallways felt heavy. Every time it was quiet, the silence felt even louder. Camilla tried to get back in. She asked for papers. She tried to drop by offices unexpectedly. But every time she was told no or people ignored her. For someone who had gone from being a controversial figure to being the queen, this silent exile felt very deliberate. But the most painful part came from within the family. There were rumors that Kate, the Princess of Wales, had already been told things that Camilla didn't even know about. If this was true, it meant that Camilla wasn't just losing her job, she was being replaced. Trust had been taken away from the queen consort and given to the next generation. No one warned her. No one explained why. Her authority was just gone. Charles, who used to be her biggest fan, wouldn't give her any answers. His silence wasn't because he forgot. It was on purpose. It felt like a burn. She tried to talk to him as a wife, but he just turned away. The man who once did everything for her was now watching her lose her power and doing nothing to stop it. This was a betrayal that could never be fixed. It wasn't a fight with words, it was a fight with silence. Camilla was so upset that she stopped going to 2 big events. In public, they said her schedule changed. But in private, everyone knew she was falling apart. The weight of being left out was making her feel like she couldn't show her face. The palace was moving on, and it was moving on without her. As Camilla stayed away, the palace turned to a new leader for the money. William was already being trained for a much bigger role. Without saying much to the public, William took over. There were no trumpets. There was no parade. Just a secret code, a wax seal, and a very old title were handed to him. But inside the folders he was given were secrets that only a future king is allowed to know. This change was quiet, but it was like a loud thunderclap inside the palace. To the people outside, everything looked normal. But inside the gold walls, William was acting differently. He knew that his new job was serious. It wasn't something to show off. It was something to respect and protect. He got his first secret report just hours after taking the job. He was surrounded by the smartest money experts in the monarchy. These people used to report to Queen Elizabeth, then they reported to Charles, and now they reported to William. The air in the room felt very heavy. William was no longer just the son. He was the guard of the treasure. These meetings showed William more than just a bunch of numbers. They showed him the history of the royal family. There were accounts that had been hidden for many years. There were trust funds set up by kings and queens from a long time ago. There were secret payments that went all over the world. What William had now was more than just money. It was authority over secrets that almost no one else knew. One of the staff said that William looked up from the papers and said, "We will make things modern, but we will do it with dignity." This was a big statement. It meant that the royal money wouldn't just be sitting in a vault anymore. It was going to be used in a new way under William's control. For the people who were paying attention, it was the first sign that William was already starting to act like a king. His time had already begun, even if he didn't have the crown on his head yet. But the shift in power was noticed by the people who were left behind. Camilla was still in the palace, even if she wasn't in the money books. At a big party for a charity, Camilla and William had to see each other for the first time since the change. The room felt very tense, like there was smoke in the air. William was polite, but he wasn't warm. He nodded at Camilla, and she knew exactly what that meant. There would be no going back. Her power was gone, and she couldn't get it back. Everyone at the party noticed how cold it felt between them, but no one said it out loud. Then Charles gave William one last big signal of support. He sent a handwritten letter. It wasn't for my son. It was addressed to the keeper. In that moment, William knew that this wasn't just a job. It was a trust given to him by the king. Charles had made his final choice. Just as William was getting used to his new role, a shocking secret from the past came out. It involved Camilla more than anyone thought it would. A secret report from the time when Queen Elizabeth was still alive was found. It showed that money was being used in strange ways. There were problems with the accounts, and at the center of the problem was a person who worked for Camilla. The timing of this secret coming out was very suspicious. The report was called the Windsor Financial Review. was finished right before Queen Elizabeth died. It was kept secret and locked away, but now it was back like a ghost from the past. The report showed that money that was supposed to go to charities for poor people in the countryside was being moved somewhere else. It was going into new projects that were run by people Camilla picked herself. People were shocked. It wasn't just that money was moving, it was the way it was done. Rules were being skipped. One name was in the report over and over again. It was Camilla's personal money advisor. When William saw the report, that advisor quit his job immediately. Everyone knew what that meant. Someone knew they were in big trouble. William wanted everything to be clear and honest. He didn't want any more secrets. Even though the report was supposed to stay private, William believed that the only way to make people trust the royals again was to show the truth. He ordered a new review of every single account that Camilla had touched. This was a very brave move. It was a bit dangerous because it could cause a lot of drama in the family. What he found was exactly what people feared. Money was being moved into places where no one could track it. Even Charles, who usually tried to ignore problems to keep things peaceful, couldn't ignore this. The report showed the truth right in front of him. It reopened old hurts that he tried to forget. He didn't yell at Camilla in public, but he changed. He became very quiet and very careful. One person said he sat and looked at the report for a whole hour without saying a single word. Then he just nodded and said, "It had to be done." The fallout from this report was going to be huge. It was going to start a battle for the future of the royal family. But Camilla wasn't going to go down without a fight. She is not the kind of person who stays quiet when she is in trouble. She went to the green drawing room to have a big talk with the king. She accused him of being mean and betraying her. She said he was picking favorites. But the palace cameras only saw her leaving the room with a very angry face. For many days, Camilla felt like she was surrounded by a thick fog of silence. No one would answer her. Charles was always busy with other things. She asked to see him twice, and twice she was told no. This wasn't just royal rules, it was personal. The second time she was told no, she didn't listen. She burst into the room anyway. She started crying and shouting. It was a scene the palace hadn't seen since the days of Princess Diana. Camilla cried out, "You've replaced me. You gave everything to William and left me behind." The staff outside could hear everything. By the time the sun went down, everyone in the palace knew about the fight. People were talking about the look on her face and the cold voice of the king. When she asked him to change his mind and give her power back, Charles said something that ended everything. He said, "The decision is final." He didn't shout. He just said it, and the conversation was over. Inside their private rooms, the tension was so thick you could feel it. Kate was worried about her children and tried to keep them away from the fighting. For the first time, their home felt like a place where no one wanted to be. Camilla locked herself in her room. She wouldn't see anyone. No one said sorry. Inside the palace, a whisper went around. People said, "She's been dethroned," without a word. There was no official news from Buckingham Palace about the fight. There were no pictures of the family looking happy together. There was just a big empty space. And in that space, William grew more powerful. He was making the big decisions now. He wasn't just giving advice, he was the boss. What started as a small change was now a huge revolution. The guard was changing. It wasn't a big announcement, but it was happening every day. The royal family was shifting, and Camilla was now on the outside. But while Camilla was losing her power, the monarchy was getting ready for a new future with William. For hundreds of years, the keeper of the purse was about trust. Now that trust was moving from the wife to the son. It was about blood, not marriage. William didn't waste any time. Now that he had the power, he started writing a new plan for the royal money. He didn't want to do things the old way. He wanted the money to be a bridge to the people. He wanted it to help the future of his children. The first changes he made were small. He used old funds to help schools for kids and to protect the environment. Protecting nature became a big priority for the palace money. People close to William said this was a big shift. The royal purse wasn't a secret vault anymore. It was a tool to do good. But it wasn't just about now. William set up special bank accounts for his children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. This sent a clear message. The future of the royal family's wealth was going to stay with the direct heirs. It was a way of saying that the crown's future was safe. Kate was always by William's side. She wasn't just watching, she was helping. Reports said she was giving advice on how to make the royal buildings better for the planet. She was helping with the budgets for public projects. Her role was growing every day, which made it even more obvious that Camilla was out. The final break happened very quietly. There was a private meeting in the royal library. Charles confirmed that William was in charge of the money permanently. No one argued. Everyone in the room knew it was the right thing to do. The king said, "We serve time, not tradition." This meant that they had to change to survive. Camilla wasn't even at the meeting. It wasn't a punishment, it was just how things had to be. Palace historians called this the silent reform. It was a change that happened through steady work, not through a big scandal. William had stepped into power and was now writing his own story. Just as things were settling down, one last act happened that shook everything. A secret envelope was delivered to Camilla. It was written by King Charles himself. It wasn't a mean letter. It was a letter of resignation. Charles had made peace with his choice, but the last line of the letter changed everything for Camilla. The envelope was passed from hand to hand until it reached her desk. She opened it all alone. The letter leaked out in small pieces later. In it, Charles confessed that he was afraid. He was afraid of making the same mistakes as people in the past. He was afraid of letting his feelings get in the way of his duty as king. He had to protect the monarchy that his mother had worked so hard for. He didn't pass the money to William to be mean to Camilla. He did it to make sure the royal family survived. One line in the letter was very important. Charles mentioned that Queen Elizabeth wouldn't have liked the direction things were going recently. This was a big admission. It meant there was a rift between the past and the present. The letter didn't need to name names. Everyone knew what it meant. Charles was officially taking Camilla's name off all the money papers. She would never have a role in the royal finances again. The very last line of the letter said, "You were loved, but the crown must endure." This was a goodbye. It was a goodbye to Camilla's power. The woman who had been by the king's side through everything was now written out of the most important part of the royal family's structure. The decision was permanent. The next morning, Camilla went to a public event. It was her first time out since she got the letter. But something was very different. She was standing all by herself. The helper who was always with her was gone, and the most shocking thing was that her special brooch, the one that showed she was in authority, was missing. She didn't say anything to the reporters. She didn't give a speech, but her silence was very loud. The pictures of her standing alone went all over the world. They confirmed that the queen consort had been silenced. It wasn't a scandal that did it. It was the simple fact that the next king was taking over. In quiet rooms and through secret letters, history was rewritten. Trust and duty had won. The crown was protecting its future, and William was the one holding the keys. Thank you for watching this deep look into the palace secrets. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next update. The world of the royals is always changing, and we will be here to tell you every single story. Goodbye for now.